Have you ever noticed how some people genuinely do not care about sports at all? While others become emotionally invested in teams, players, championships, and rivalries, there is another group of people who feel completely disconnected from it. They do not follow scores. They do not wait for match results. They do not remember player names. And sometimes they genuinely do not understand why millions of people become so emotionally attached to something happening on a field or court. To many people, this can seem unusual, sometimes even strange, because sports are often treated as if they are almost universal. They are everywhere, on television, on social media, in conversations at school, at work, at family gatherings. Sometimes people assume everyone should naturally care about them. So when someone says, I actually do not care about sports at all, the response can be confusion. Some people immediately assume they must be boring. They probably do not enjoy competition. They are missing out. Or sometimes they are pretending to be different, but psychologically, things may not be that simple. Because human interests do not emerge randomly. People are not born automatically loving the same things. Not everyone experiences excitement in the same way. Not everyone reacts emotionally to the same type of stimulation. And perhaps this becomes easier to understand when you think about something else. Imagine two people walking into the same room. Inside that room, one person sees shelves filled with books. Their eyes immediately light up. They feel curious, excited, interested. The other person walks into the exact same room, looks around, and feels almost nothing. Now imagine another room. Inside that room is a giant screen showing a championship match. One person immediately becomes focused. Their heart rate rises. They feel anticipation. The outcome suddenly feels important. Meanwhile, another person watches the exact same event and experiences almost no emotional reaction. Neither person is wrong. Neither person is missing something. And neither person is necessarily more interesting than the other. Because one of the most important things psychology has repeatedly shown is that human beings do not all experience reward in identical ways. Different minds become stimulated by different things. Different environments shape different preferences. Different experiences create different emotional associations. So perhaps the question is not, why do some people not care about sports? Maybe the more interesting question is, what makes some people care so deeply in the first place? Because once we understand that, many things begin to make much more sense. And the answer starts with something psychologists call reward sensitivity. And the answer starts with something psychologists call reward sensitivity. Reward sensitivity refers to how strongly a person's brain responds to certain kinds of stimulation and rewards. Psychologists have known for a long time that not all people experience excitement equally. Different individuals react differently to competition, differently to risk, differently to unpredictability, and differently to social experiences. This means two people can watch the exact same sporting event and walk away with completely different emotional reactions. One person may feel tension building during the final minutes of a match. Their attention becomes completely focused. Their heart rate increases. They feel anticipation. Every movement suddenly feels important. Their brain interprets uncertainty as exciting. The possibility of winning creates emotional reward. Even the possibility of losing can create emotional intensity. But another person sitting beside them may experience something entirely different. They see people running, numbers changing, a crowd reacting, but emotionally, almost nothing happens. And this does not necessarily mean they dislike sports. It may simply mean their brain is not assigning the same emotional value to that experience. Imagine listening to music. Some people hear a song and immediately feel something. A memory appears. Emotion appears. Their attention becomes captured. Meanwhile, another person hears the exact same song and simply thinks, it's okay. Sports can work in a very similar way. For some individuals, competition itself becomes rewarding. Uncertainty becomes rewarding. Prediction becomes rewarding. Even small things become emotionally meaningful. Questions like, will they score? Can they come back? What happens next? Create anticipation. And anticipation itself can become pleasurable. Research suggests that uncertainty often activates reward systems in the brain because human beings naturally become interested in outcomes they cannot predict perfectly. This is one reason why sports can feel intensely engaging to some people. There is suspense, emotion, conflict, unexpected outcomes. but people differ greatly in how much they enjoy that kind of stimulation. Some individuals prefer environments with constant novelty and emotional shifts. Others prefer activities that feel calmer and more internally focused. And this becomes important because many people assume that if someone does not enjoy sports, they simply do not enjoy excitement. But psychology suggests that excitement itself comes in many forms. Someone who feels nothing while watching a football match may become completely absorbed while solving a difficult problem. Someone who feels disconnected from sports may become intensely focused while creating music, or writing, or building something, or studying a subject they care deeply about. Because excitement does not disappear, it simply changes direction. And beyond reward systems, there is another powerful factor that shapes why people become attached to sports, something called social identity. And beyond reward systems, there is another powerful factor that shapes why people become attached to sports, something called social identity. Psychologists have spent decades studying the way people develop a sense of belonging. And one of the strongest findings in social psychology is that people naturally organize themselves into groups. Groups create familiarity. Groups create shared experiences. Groups create identity. Human beings often define themselves partly through the things they belong to: family, culture, communities, friend circles, belief systems. And for millions of people around the world, sports teams become one of those identities. Supporting a team often becomes much more than simply watching a game. It becomes a shared emotional experience, a shared language, a shared story. You can see this almost everywhere. People wear the same colors, use the same symbols, celebrate the same victories, feel disappointed by the same losses. People who have never met before can suddenly feel connected simply because they support the same team. Psychologically, this creates a strong feeling of belonging. People naturally seek environments where they feel connected to something larger than themselves. Sports can become one of the easiest pathways toward that experience. But people do not all build identity in the same place. Some individuals build identity around communities, others around skills, ideas, personal projects, or long-term interests. Someone may feel more connected discussing books than discussing football. Another person may feel more connected while creating music than sitting inside a stadium. Someone else may feel stronger identification with science, technology, or creative work. The important point is that the need for connection itself is usually still there. The structure remains the same, only the location changes. And another factor makes these differences even stronger over time: early exposure. Psychological research repeatedly shows that many strong interests begin forming during childhood. The brain creates emotional associations surprisingly early. Experiences that repeat frequently begin to feel familiar, and familiarity itself can gradually become rewarding. Imagine a child growing up in a house where every weekend involves watching sports. Parents become excited. Friends become excited. Celebrations happen after victories. Conversations revolve around teams and players. Over time, sports slowly become connected to emotion, to memory, to family experiences, to belonging. But imagine someone growing up very differently. No one watches sports. No one talks about sports. No one treats sports as emotionally important. For that person, those emotional associations may never develop. And because the connection never forms, sports may simply feel like another activity among thousands of others. Not bad, not boring, just emotionally neutral. And that is where another interesting psychological difference begins to appear. Because attention itself does not organize in the same way for everyone. And that is where another interesting psychological difference begins to appear. Because people do not simply differ in what they enjoy, they also differ in how their attention naturally organizes itself. Psychologists sometimes describe this through differences in cognitive preferences. In simple terms, people do not naturally focus on the world in identical ways. Some minds become highly engaged by movement, immediate feedback, fast changes, constant external stimulation. Other minds become absorbed by something entirely different: systems, patterns, ideas, long-term questions, complex relationships between things. Imagine two people sitting in the same room. One person notices the game playing on television almost immediately. They begin watching without effort. Their attention follows the movement naturally, the changing score, the tension, the pace. Meanwhile, another person in that same room becomes distracted by something else entirely. Maybe they begin wondering how a piece of technology works. Maybe they notice a question they recently read. Maybe their attention drifts toward an idea they have been thinking about all day. Neither person consciously decides where attention goes. Attention often moves automatically toward whatever the brain interprets as meaningful. And this matters because meaning is not identical for everyone. Some individuals become interested in immediate experiences. Others become interested in understanding deeper structures beneath those experiences. Some become fascinated by human behavior. Some by mathematics, some by art, some by building things, some by ideas that can occupy their mind for years. Neither direction says anything about intelligence or value. They simply reflect different patterns of engagement, and emotion also plays an important role here. Sports can involve powerful emotional movement, excitement, tension, hope, frustration, uncertainty. For many people, those emotional shifts become part of the experience itself. But emotional intensity does not feel equally rewarding to everyone. Some individuals naturally enjoy emotional unpredictability. Others prefer environments that feel more stable, more controlled, more internally focused. Imagine riding a roller coaster. Some people immediately want another ride. Others think, that was enough. Sports can sometimes create similar emotional patterns. For some people, that emotional movement feels exciting. For others, it simply feels less attractive than activities that provide different kinds of satisfaction. And surprisingly, this difference begins connecting to something even larger. Because sometimes the question is not only what people enjoy, sometimes it is also whether they feel pressure to enjoy what everyone else does. And surprisingly, this difference begins connecting to something even larger. Because sometimes the question is not only what people enjoy, sometimes it is also whether they feel pressure to enjoy what everyone else does. Research in personality psychology suggests that people differ in how strongly they respond to social expectations. Some individuals naturally move toward commonly shared interests. Shared interests often create smoother conversations, easier social connection, faster feelings of belonging. And there is nothing unusual about that. Human beings have always depended on social groups. But some individuals naturally feel less pressure to move with the crowd. Their interests tend to develop more through personal curiosity than social influence. This means someone may completely ignore conversations about sports, while becoming deeply invested in something most people around them barely notice. Someone might spend hours learning psychology. Someone else becomes fascinated by astronomy, technology, music, history, business, or ideas that feel meaningful only to them. One of the most common misunderstandings is assuming that when something becomes popular, it should automatically feel meaningful to everyone. But psychology repeatedly shows something different. Popularity and personal meaning are not the same thing. Something can be loved by millions of people and still create almost no emotional response in someone else. And the opposite can also be true. A subject that seems ordinary to everyone else can become deeply important to one individual. And perhaps this is the most important point of all. Not caring about sports does not mean someone lacks passion. It does not mean they lack excitement. It does not mean they lack social connection. Very often, it simply means emotional importance has been assigned somewhere else. Because human behavior is shaped by many things: personality, experience, environment, attention, emotion, social influence. All of them interact together. Sports simply happen to be one expression of human interest among countless others. People do not need identical interests to live meaningful lives. And they do not need to become excited by the same things to be deeply engaged with the world. People simply invest meaning into different parts of life. And maybe that difference is one of the reasons human psychology remains endlessly fascinating. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Click the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. And be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being here. At Cortex Psychology, we explore the hidden patterns behind the way you think, feel, and connect. If this video helped you understand yourself a little more, stay with us. You don't have to decode your mind alone. We'll decode it together. See you in the next one.